So, friends, the British conquest of India, as we are just discussing, is closely related to a concept called colonialism. Now, British conquest of India is nothing but the beginning of British colonialism in India. Now, let us try to understand the concept of colonialism, because it is always said the British colonial rule, and all that, right? Let us try to understand what is colonialism. Then we will see what are the stages of British colonialism in India. Then we will go to other aspects of, the administrative aspects of the first 100 years of British rule. Now, just let me tell you what do you mean by colonialism? What is, I hope you are able to see, colonialism. Colonialism. Okay. Now, there is a definition. This is an economic system. This is an economic system or economic phenomena, you can say. Sorry. Economic phenomena where the advanced economies, this is sometimes called mother country. These are specific terminologies which you may need to understand, because the things are becoming complicated in the exam. They are asking somewhat higher level. This is an economic philosophy where the advanced economy, mother country, subjugates an underdeveloped economy, a less developed or underdeveloped economy, for economic exploitation. This is what do you mean by colonialism. And globally, not only in India, we have the beginning of colonialism in 18th century, and of course 19th century also we see the spread of colonialism, and of course up to the world wars, the first world war and second world war end, we do have the issue of colonialism, right? Now now we also have a phenomena that there is another concept called imperialism. Now, what do you mean by British imperialism? What is imperialism? What is imperialism? Now, imperialism is nothing but, we can say, the territorial expansion. Territorial expansion and political subjugation can be called as imperialism. Now you say British imperialism in India is nothing but the spread of British power in India, right? The British political rule in India. So basically, it is as simple as this. Do you think without political subjugation, will anybody or will any country allow others to economically exploit? For example, if British is not having government in India, do you think people will pay taxes? Do you think people will go for the Diwani rights, or who are there to collect taxes? Because politically they defeated. The Buxar battle, they defeated Shah Alam II, then they defeated Mir Qasim and Shahjuddaula, and then the Mughal emperor gave them the Diwani rights. So without defeating, it is not possible, right? So imperialism is political subjugation. We can also say it is the political domination. In a whole thing, it is expansionism, territorial expansionism. Imperial is political subjugation. Okay. It is also territorial expansion. It is also territorial expansion in a way. So political subjugation, imperialism is nothing but political subjugation. We have a definition that highest form of colonialism is imperialism, because without political subjugation no country will allow others to dominate, right? That's why we interchangeably use the words British colonialism in India or British imperialism in India. Imperialism is spread of British authority or British power in India, whereas colonialism is simply for economic exploitation, right? So British colonialism in India. So this is the broad topic. You can get a question on what is colonialism and explain the process of British colonialism in India. There are also stages of British colonialism in India. Okay, stages of the British colonialism in India. We have three important stages. Now, what are the three important stages? One, it is actually called the merchant capital or monopoly of trade. Okay, the merchant capital, or monopoly of trade. I explain what is this. This is tentatively given a time of 1757 to 1813, right? The second important stage of British colonialism in India is industrial capitalism. The industrial capitalism or capital, you can say capitalism, you can say the merchant capitalism. The industrial capitalism or the era of free trade, industrial capitalism or the era of free trade. Okay, now this is from 1813 to 1870s. This is from 1813 to 1870s. The third one is the financial imperialism. The financial imperialism. We can also say that this is an era of the international competition for colonies. Okay, international INTL competition, an era of international competition for colonies by all the major countries. So friends, the British colonialism in India and stages. This is a very short question generally. What is British colonialism in India? What are the three stages? Or discuss the three stages of British colonialism in India. They can also ask you, the British colonialism in India is not static or it is very dynamic. The nature of British colonialism in India is changing from time to time. Like that, they can ask you. Okay. So basically, friends, let me explain these three stages which are very interesting. See, when we say 1757 to 1813, this was the time when we have the Battle of Plassey, then Battle of Buxar, 1757, 1764, acquisition of Diwani rights, 1765, the dual government, 1772, 1765 to 1772. Then we have Regulating Act, right? After that we have an amendment to Regulating Act. Then we have Pitt's India Act, 1784. Then 1813 Charter Act, right? 1813 Charter Act is important because it removed the monopoly of East India Company over trade with India. Okay. However, East India Company's monopoly over trade with China continued. That's a different thing. Now, this is called the merchant capitalism or monopoly of trade. Now, why are we calling it as merchant capitalism? Remember, in each stage, we have to identify what is the objective of the British rule in India, or what is the objective of British colonialism in India. In this stage, according to Bipan Chandra, and of course there are theories of colonialism. We have people like Gurnal Mirdal and others who wrote books like Asian Drama and all that on this very interesting aspect. So according to Bipan Chandra, in the first stage of British colonialism in India, the objective of British rule is to exploit India through trade. Profiteering by trade has been the main objective, though towards the end this has been changing. Because in 1757, the British did not have any idea to, in fact, conquer India. They were never sure that they will be ruling in India. Friends, it is a well-known fact that it was only after the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War in 1799 when Tipu Sultan finally fell, unfortunately, to the bullets of British. It was only then the British had got the confidence that yes, we can rule over India forever. Till then they were never sure. In fact, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore was so tough for the British. We have Wellesley. Wellesley has called Arthur Wellesley, his brother from England, to help him. It was this Arthur Wellesley who was to defeat Napoleon later in the Battle of Waterloo. Imagine, for a strong person like Tipu Sultan, British had to pool in their entire energies. When do we call brothers? When we are in trouble. So imagine Wellesley was so skeptical. He did not have confidence that he can deal alone with Tipu Sultan. He was such a powerful person who really threatened the British rule in India. Okay, but after that, there is a lot of clarity for the British. So, just simple, when you divide this, you have to write on each of them. If this question comes, then you say in the first stage, the main objective of the British was to exploit India through trade. They were for a long time, till almost the end, were not sure of their stay in India as political masters. That's why very few changes were introduced in the administration or the basic structure of the British rule in this stage, because the exploitation through trade would not require any basic changes in the administration. See friends, if you see, it was only in 1793 that the Permanent Settlement Act was introduced, not before that, not at 1715. We are almost towards the end of the period, right? So it is as simple as that. When you are in a hotel, will you have hotel painted, whitewashed with your own money? No, because you are not there for long. You will leave today or tomorrow. So you don't make any changes. You just manage the time and get out. The British attitude was like this. So for the most part of the British first phase of colonialism in India, the basic structure of British rule did not change. Of course, the difference is that from 1793, we have land revenue tenures that are being tampered with by introduction of Permanent Settlement Act, and of course Cornwallis also brought in Cornwallis Code and other things. But other than that, we do not have any basic changes in the Indian administration of the British by the East India Company. So by 1813, there was a problem in England. What is the problem in England? Everybody was upset that why it was only British or East India Company that was allowed to exploit in India. Let everybody loot India. Let everybody loot India. That was the slogan in England. And of course, this also led to the policy of laissez-faire or free trade. So by 1813, we under political pressure and the pressure of economic ideology, the monopoly of East India Company over trade with India was removed by the Charter Act, and doors of India, British India, were open to all Britishers or all English traders who are ready to exploit India. Okay. So we enter the second stage after 1813 Charter Act, or with the 1813 Charter Act, that this is actually called the industrial capitalism. Why are we calling it as industrial capitalism? This was the time, my dear friends, that in England we had the industrial revolution almost gaining maturity. It started in 1730s, 40s, but 1750s to in a tangible manner. But by 1813, it really, England was a major industrialized country. Friends, the requirement of an industrialized country would differ. They need raw materials and they need markets for their finished goods. Now, England is rich, no doubt. When industrial revolution was beginning in England, it had enough natural resources to kickstart it. But then, when there was, a huge growth of industries in England, the raw materials that were there in England are not enough to feed the monsters of machines that were there in England. So obviously, it was actually a search for markets, a search for raw materials and markets that characterized the second stage of British colonialism in India. That's a very, very important point for you. So what is the objective of the British in the second stage of colonialism? That is to make India a supplier of raw materials to Britain and also as a market, convert India as a market for their finished goods. This is the second stage. Now friends, to do this, there are basic changes required. Now, what are the basic changes? You see all major changes in the British reforms, administrative reforms, whether it was introduction of English education or railways and other systems like Raitwari and Mahalwari were done at this point of time. Now, without opening up, without English education, the British would not have been able to exploit India because, see, India is so rich in languages, so rich in culture that we ourselves can't understand what is India. A lifetime is not adequately enough. See, whenever there is a demand from my family that let's go to abroad, that country, this country, I will always say yes, we should see abroad also, no doubt, but we should also see India. That's why it's called Incredible India, right? We can't understand the Incredible India. What the hell the British will understand? And without understanding, how do you loot India? You go to a home to steal. Now you are asking them where is money. He is saying something you don't understand. Can you steal? That was the dilemma for the British. So what their intelligent beggars, what they thought was, see, India is supposed to be having more than 500 languages and dialects. See, that's why we get a lot of different numbers here. Now, language is different from dialect. Language is one, dialect is one. The way Hindi is spoken is different in Delhi or in Hyderabad, or Bhojpuri Hindi is different. See, old Amitabh Bachchan movies like Dawn, the famous song, about Pan, and all these are Bhojpuri Hindi, right? Similarly, the way Telugu is spoken is different in Rayalaseema, in Telangana and in Andhra, right? So we have different dialects. So the British were very confused. We need a band of people to exploit India, to help us exploit India. That is possible only to reach interiors. Now see all global majors, even IT companies. All these are why they are putting Coca-Cola or what anything you see, Walmart. Why Walmart will put its name in Telugu, Walmart? That is how they penetrate markets. Language is an important barrier for economic reach. Language is an important barrier for markets. So English thought we'll exploit India if we introduce English language as a means to create band of clerks who will be able to read and write English and work as clerks. Of course, it has a different consequence. We have not stopped there. We questioned English. We read about Rousseau. We read about Hobbes. We read about John Locke, Voltaire, Derrida. All these philosophies we read and we found about the British parliamentary system and started asking for freedom. That's altogether different context. But friends, imagine the basic change of English education was introduced in the second stage. Railways. Without railways, when the railways 1853, the work on railway, the first rail chugged. But this was also in the second phase, if you remember, because they wanted to get raw materials and they also wanted to exploit it, reach the finished goods to different markets. Excuse me. Different markets, so railways were introduced. Don't believe Don't believe that railways were introduced to help India. Railways were introduced to loot India. Railways were introduced to integrate India, subjugated economy with the global economy, which was dominated by the British at that point of time, right? So anyway, but railways helped us, right? Because with railways connected us. Railways not only removed the distance, physical distance among the Indians, but they also brought them closer in the mind distance. Don't think closer means, don't imagine all of your young people, if somebody is coming closer, I'm not talking of that. I'm talking about minds. I'm talking about meeting of minds, meeting of ideas, meetings of ideologies, meetings of anti-British feelings that had come very shortly after the introduction of railways. But this railways change was also introduced in the second stage, because this question is very much likely in the UPSC mains that you will be facing after October 5th prelims, and also APPSC Group 1 mains, or any history exam in modern India. This is a very, very important topic, friends. So you simply write that. But then the second stage of British colonialism has a contradiction. The contradiction is, Bipin Chandra writes beautifully, further exploitation of India says that whatever changes that were introduced by British in the second stage of colonialism will eventually create national sentiment, and of course national movement also began almost by the same time that you remember, then the final stage is called the financial imperialism, or the international competition for colonies, where the lot of investments have been made into India, whether in the form of railways or modern industries or plantations or whatever. So this is called financial imperialism. The objective of the British at this point of time in the third stage is to protect their investments in India, their interests in India, so that India will continue to serve British economy as a subordinate but more potent and powerful partner. That's why we see a tightening of British control over Indian reactions. You see Lytton's Vernacular Press Act or Arms Act and all that we see from 1870s onwards, and also subsequently Cudgell's policies, and how British were trying to subdue the national movement, or the silent Indian national sentiment. That is the third stage. And friends, according to historians including Bipin Chandra and Ameya Kumar Bagchi, who is a very well-known economic historian, though India got freedom, in the world now the financial imperialism is still says. Okay, so this is what I want to tell you. This question, if there is a question on what is British what is colonialism, discuss the stages of British colonialism in India. Or do you think British colonialism was not the same right from the beginning to the end? Or British colonial, the nature and objectives of the British colonialism were not the same throughout, and it were linked to the developments in English economy. Discuss, comment like that. The questions might come. In UPSC, you get somewhat slightly differently framed questions, but in other exams, they will be, even in UPSC earlier we have examples, we have previous papers when what are the stages of British colonialism in India, like that. So this is a very important topic. I thought I would just tell you this. So friends, this is what I want to tell you. So just read it. If you have any doubts, you have always my number on the YouTube channel. You are always welcome to call me. Okay. So thanks. Read well always.